but this is the Environmental Awareness Show, and I'm going to start with primary water again from the Global Resource Alliance. It's another nonprofit that's dealing with planting trees and knows about primary water. This is Dean Val here with Dean Kevin today. And on their website, they talk about primary water. Water is essential to overcoming hunger, poverty, and disease. Yet worldwide, more than 1 billion people still lack access to clean, safe drinking water. 5 million people, mostly children, die each year from waterborne diseases, double the number of deaths caused by AIDS. Some 60% of all infant mortality is linked to infectious and parasitic diseases, most of them water-related. In December 2003, the UN General Assembly proclaimed the years 2005 to 2015 to be the International Decade for Action, Water for Life, an international drive to bring safe water and basic sanitation to communities around the world. The goal set by the UN Millennium Project is to have, by 2015, the proportion of people without sustainable access to safe drinking water and basic sanitation. How's that going? Sounds all good. Let's see. GRA responded to the call with this website, the Global Resource Alliance, responded to the call by initiating a bold and unconventional water resource development project called Maji Menji, Abundant Water. In 2008, we imported a new deep rock drilling rig, Atlas Copco air compressor, and used vehicles from the UK to drill boreholes for rural communities, schools, health centers, and churches, utilizing theories developed by the late Stephen Rice of Ojai, California. And then the air drills are supposed to be the most environmentally friendly. Our volunteer project consultant, Paul Power, is a protege of Rice with over 30 years experience locating and tapping the abundant clean water found in fractured primary rock. And again, this is water from the Earth's mantle, comes up through vapor, through the fissures, fractures of the rock. It feeds both aquifers and the oceans and the atmosphere. Global Resource Alliance ended its primary water project in 2018, but in the 10 years it was active, we completed 135 successful boreholes serving nearly 50,000 people in villages, schools, public and private organizations, and various government institutions. A single borehole typically serves about 300 people and costs under $9,000, including a top quality Dutch-made hand pump. At $30 per person for a lifetime of clean, safe water, the cost is significantly less than what villagers pay for the wood or charcoal needed to boil contaminated water, formerly collected from up to 5 miles away. To take the risk out of this sizable investment, GRA guarantees that the boreholes we drill yield enough high-quality water to justify the installation of a hand pump, or the village pays nothing. About primary water. Primary water theory states that water is created within the Earth's interior and travels toward the surface via fissures and fractures in primary rock. This water represents new additions to the standard hydrological cycle. It can be accessed by drilling into bedrock, often at depths of just 100 to 300 feet. Also referred to as new, juvenile, magmatic, or earth-generated water. Mention of primary water can be found in modern literature, although it is not generally recognized as significant by the hydrological community. Accordingly, its potential to ameliorate the world's growing water crisis remains largely unrealized. Evidence of primary water comes from a variety of sources. Natural springs, for instance, can be found throughout the world that have been producing thousands of gallons of pure, fresh water per minute continuously since biblical times. Many of these, like the Fountain of Apollo in Libya and the Ain Bay in Syria, have seeded civilizations. Others, like giant springs of Florida, are merely wonders of nature. In addition to these naturally occurring springs, primary water is often encountered accidentally when tunneling through rock for mines, roadways, or waterways, even at high elevations, far above any drainage basin. And I think that's what Gaddafi found when he was drilling for oil in Libya. This wonderful primary water source, and then he started his man-made river project, great man-made river project to irrigate Africa. The famous Comstock silver mine on the eastern slope of Mount Davidson near Nevada City, for example, pumped over 5 million gallons a day out of flooded mine shafts until the pumps failed and the mine was closed in 1886. In the 1950s, water was struck tunneling through the Santa Ynez Mountains in Santa Barbara that flowed over 13 million gallons a day. Construction was halted until the gushing fissure could be sealed. Many castles in Europe, built hundreds of years ago on high rocky promontories, have wells hand-hewn in solid rock that have been producing fresh, pure water for centuries. More recently, in the past 10 years, exploration projects in Sudan, Somalia, and the West Indies islands of Trinidad and Tobago have successfully tapped the abundant water locked in fractured bedrock. By defying conventional hydrological wisdom, an innovative engineering company was able to obtain yields of up to 50 times that estimated by the experts at a fraction of the cost by other alternatives. Okay, so that's their section here for primary water. This website is Global Resource Alliance. They have a lot of projects in Africa, permaculture, tree planting. They even discuss MMS, Jim Humble's miracle mineral solution, the chlorine dioxide that helps to offset a lot of diseases. So I've been trying to contact them, no luck yet. And my project here in La Mission in Baja, Mexico, well, we had supposedly a dowser to come out. He was actually the chief of police who knows dowsing, to confirm a previous dowser dousers find and get a second opinion. I'll get a third and a fourth later. We're still waiting for this chief of police to come out, but we're trying to locate water here on the community garden to drill a well, primary water well. The first dowser hit water at 14 meters, and then as we went up the hill, it got deeper. So we'll see what we can find here and do with what we have here in Baja. It's a very arid, semi-arid area. Northern Baja is a lot greener than the southern part, which is primarily desert. We do have some trees here that naturally grow, naturally, at least where we live, between Rosarito and Ensenada, trees that have well, volunteered, come up. There's pepper trees, olives, eucalyptus, and then a lot of trees that have been planted that do well here, which are the citrus, grapefruit, lemons, oranges, tangerines. And then we have figs, dates, pomegranates, persimmons. They do well too up here in northern Baja. So we'll see what we can do. I'll give you updates every week about how we're doing with the drilling of this well for primary water. I'm asking for donations right now from the community to see if we can get something going with this. The owner here on the property has some money, but I'd like to help him out because he's doing some other projects. But this will be our demonstration garden for people once we get our funding to show people what can be done with the land, providing self-sustaining communities, and part of that, of course, is water and food. So this will be a demonstration for that. So any questions, anybody? Kevin, before we go on to your section?
Yeah, in regards to dowsing, when I read a little bit and did a little research into that, it seems that when you do douse, you need to be very, very specific exactly what you're looking for. And so you'd have to be assured that the individual understands primary water and how deep it is that he has got to search to locate it, because otherwise you might end up with more surface water as opposed to primary water.
That's my challenge here with not very good Spanish and speaking with these people, and I've got some imagery, some graphs I'm showing him when he does show up. Some of the imagery that's on some of these primary water websites talks about how the cycle works and where the water really comes from. So when he asks the question, ask specifically for primary water sources, because dowsing can be used for finding other, metals and gold, things like that too. So they did ask, the first dowser asked the depth. I wasn't there when he did it, so I'm not sure. I think it was just the aquifer he hit. So I want to be here and film the second fellow who comes by and film it, put it on the. We have a Facebook group here, the Puerto El Valle water well Facebook group. I'll post it there and other sources on my Facebook group too.
Yeah, because I can imagine that if there was any doubt in an individual, if they didn't fully accept the reality of primary water, that would probably actually act as a sort of a personal self-block to the ability to use the dowsing rod. Because as I understand it, you need to, for dowsing to work effectively, you have to put all considerations and convictions and assumptions of the mind aside. So ideally you need to put the mind and emotions to one side, and it would seem that what I read in regards to it, the ideal state you would want to be in would be really in the nowness of your real awareness state aside from the consciousness. But obviously with the vast majority of people, they wouldn't generally be doing that, and so as they go about their dowsing business, So would they be sat in their consciousness, and whatever is rattling around inside that in regards to ideas and such would probably have a bearing on their dowsing abilities. And if there is anything in that consciousness that doesn't accept the reality of primary water, then I imagine that would probably block it. So, but yeah, who can say?
Yeah, that's very true. We'll get 3 or 4 people in here, 3 or 4 dowsers, to see if they coincide. And plus, if we do get the funding, there's the gamma rays, which it's darkened. They take like photographs, basically, or imagery from the. They can go penetrate the soil there and take imagery of the soil underground, and the dark parts are the water, the lighter parts are not. But and then there's other kinds of technologies they have now besides the dowsing. So if we do get the money, I mean, we're pretty well assured through these other means with the dowsing all together, put them together, and it's almost, 100% you can find it. So that's where we're at with that. So we'll give you an update.
Yeah, I'd certainly go more along the technological lines, because then it takes out any ideas and such of the consciousness out of the equation. So, yeah.
Right. The thing is, dowsing, you can get a hanger from your closet and do that for nothing, whereas the other $2,000, I got an estimate from the one fella for the surveying, finding it, and supervising the drilling, which isn't too bad, actually. I've heard other estimates a lot more, can run you up to 20,000, but he quoted me as 2,000 for that, and then up to maybe 8,000 for the drilling, depending on who you get. So it could be done under 10,000. Especially here, we have a lot of volcanic rock, which is more, you're likely more to hit it. And I know other wells in the area that are high above here, they're not in the aquifer because they're up on top of the mountain, the ridges. So it wouldn't be aquifer water, but some people hit it without even consciously knowing it, as far as I see, primary water. But we'll see. I'll keep you updated.
Okay, well, I have some articles about fracking, which would go along the theme of water, because obviously fracking does impact water adversely and pollute it.
Tim, yeah, in regards to like the, what was it, the mine we went up to see, I forgot the one that you showed me where the water, was flooded. You had to take out or the pump broke or something. So I wonder if that's primary water, because I was on top of the mountain there.
Oh yeah, I imagine that is probably coming up from its source that isn't the surface water, because it has it's pretty plentiful, even though the Rogue River is down in the valley below, and that's the bottom of that shaft, about 1,000 feet. It gets to the river, but there's a lot of water coming in above the river level. So another thing about the primary water is, once it's known by the powers that be, and then they start putting these primary water sources out in areas, it's just the same old thing. It'd be business. They'd be charging people for the water, but I guess that would be better water for them, and be it depends on how much the ones that provide the water are charging the people. And but what an opportunity for the earth to turn into a luscious garden in many places if it's not interfered with by the powers that be, for people to be able to work the earth with the water and the sun and grow good foods and other things too, the materials it takes to build with, some of the stuff that like bamboo but I do see that once primary water is provided, that it will get out to the ones that have the ability to drill the wells and put in the systems to provide the water, and it'll still be business. It seems like people have to be paying for the water. So they kind of need to be able to provide it for themselves, be self-sufficient, rather than having the ones that have the ability at the present to drill the wells that hit the primary water, and then if it's not artesian under enough pressure, then you have to pump and to provide. And then there's the distribution, whatever ways to move the water after it's pumped to the surface, either depending on how much water the canals or the piping, which is another bit of harnessing the water to use.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I noticed some of the big lakes in the world, like Lake Baikal in Russia. It's the deepest lake in the world. They're trying to get a map. Well, I have a map of the fault lines of the world, and they're usually near a fault line. So they're provided by the primary water, the deep-seated water is feeding them. Some of these big lakes of the world. That kind of leads you into your discussion. Apparently, for Kevin, but apparently the drillers say that it would not cause any damage to the faults. I'm not understanding that yet, but it says like they're not going to cause earthquakes and things like that the way they do the drilling. I'm not understanding that yet, but maybe you have something on that, or Tim.
Well, it might depend on what kind of explosives or drilling apparatus they're using in certain areas that are sensitive to having their weak spots already, and any interference with something weak, like in the mines above you, that's just asking for things to happen. You have to brace things up when you disturb the earth in certain areas, or it will have its release at its weakest spots.
Okay, it's quite an extensive article, so I won't be able to get through it all, but I will read a bit, stop at certain points, and then we'll see how we go for time. Then I'll probably continue it next week. But fracking is the process of drilling down into the earth before a high pressure water mixture is directed at the rock to release the gas inside. Water, sand, and chemicals are injected into the rock at high pressure, which allows the gas to flow out to the head of the well. The process can be carried out vertically or, more commonly, by drilling horizontally to the rock layer, which can create new pathways to release gas, or used to extend existing channels. The term fracking refers to how the rock is fractured apart by the high pressure mixture. The extensive use of fracking in the US has prompted environmental concerns. Fracking uses huge amounts of water,
which must be transported to the site at significant environmental cost.
So in other words, they started this fracking business, I know it must have been a good 10-15 years ago now, I'm sure, and it was cited as a revolutionary new means of extracting this shale gas, which would in theory provide additional energy and therefore take off the stress of a rapidly diminishing fossil fuels. But of course, with the dark forces suppressing all the free energy and all the various Tesla research and such, all these rather rudimentary means of generating fuel would be pretty much redundant. But that's generally not the idea of it. They want everyone to be very much dependent on their massive industries. They don't want anyone to have access to this free energy, and of course with this fracking there was actually a more insidious reason why they were doing it. The surface reason was to provide energy. The actuality of it seemed to be to exhaust water the world over, and also to poison the water supplies as well. And as I remember, there was also a lot of evidence that showed they were dumping nuclear waste in the fracking wells as well, which would of course enter the water table and spread throughout the land also. And endless reports of the water then, what water there was in the areas around the fracking drill sites, becoming undrinkable and even flammable. And so the report then goes on into the adverse consequences of using the fracking.
This article is titled Life Near Fracking Wells Equals More Birth Defects, Childhood Asthma, Childhood Leukemia, One American Community's Struggle. Earlier this year, another study confirmed that children living near fracking wells are more vulnerable to health issues. Of course, it's not only children who are vulnerable. What's happening in one American community serves as a warning to us all. This story was produced by Reveal from the Center for Investigative Reporting. When Wanda Vincent looks out the windows of her daycare center in Arlington, Texas, past the playground, she sees a row of enormous beige storage tanks. They're connected to two wells that produce natural gas for Total, one of the world's largest fossil fuel companies. No government agency, city, state or federal, monitors the air here or inspects regularly for emissions. So Vincent has no way of knowing whether dangerous gases are leaking out of all that equipment, potentially harming the children and staff who spend their days so close to those wells. She feels surrounded. Within 2 miles of her daycare, 35 wells produce gas at 6 different sites, most of them operated by TEP Barnett USA, a subsidiary of the French energy giant Total, the dominant gas producer in Arlington. The diverse Dallas suburb of 400,000 has the fortune and misfortune of sitting atop one of the country's largest onshore natural gas fields, the Barnett Shale. No one is held accountable to determine whether it's safe or not, and yet they allow them to be there, Vincent said. She goes on to say, there's not any documentation showing we've done testing and you're safe. During the pandemic, Vincent learned that Total wanted to drill 3 more wells behind her playground. Nobody had told her. It makes me feel like they don't value our lives, she said. Last year, as the Black and Latinx neighborhood around her daycare was grappling with high COVID-19 numbers, Vincent learned from a local activist that Total wanted to drill 3 more wells behind her playground. Neither the company nor the city had informed her, and she took that personally. She said, "I'm African American, and it makes me feel like they don't value our lives." 20 years of fracking in the United States has delivered not only energy independence, but also an expanding export industry in oil, natural gas, and liquefied natural gas. America's drilling boom, led by Texas, has also brought heavy industry into many rural and urban communities. Millions of people now live in the shadow of oil and gas wells, unwitting participants in a massive experiment with their health. That drilling poses substantial risks to the climate as well, because methane, the main component of natural gas, is a potent greenhouse gas. It's hard to find a place in America where as many people live close to dense drilling as here in Tarrant County. Arlington itself is home to 52 gas well sites and hundreds of wellheads. These wells are often near residential neighborhoods, commercial strips, and doctors' offices. More than 30,000 Arlington children go to public school within half a mile of wells, according to an analysis by Reveal from the Center for Investigative Reporting. And up to 7,600 infants and young children attend private daycares within that radius. 85% of the public school students are children of color, and more than 2/3 live in poverty. Altogether, more than half of Arlington's public schools and daycare facilities are within a half mile of active gas production. 8 daycare centers are within 600 feet, the standard setback in Arlington. In recent years, scores of scientific studies have linked proximity to drilling to increased health risks, including childhood asthma, childhood leukemia, and birth defects. The exposures can come from the fumes of diesel trucks, generators, or drilling rigs. They can also come from chemicals used in fracking, as companies extract oil and gas from the shale by injecting mixtures of water, sand, and chemicals. The exposures can continue over the estimated 25-year lifespan of the wells, as gases leak from wells, tanks, pipes, and valves. researchers at Oregon State University found a 59% increase in the odds of at least one asthma hospitalization among children who lived in Texas zip codes with fracking. Researchers from the University of Colorado observed that children with congenital heart defects are more likely to be born to mothers living near wells, and children with leukemia are about 4 times more likely to be living in areas with high levels of oil and gas development. Children and developing fetuses are especially vulnerable to the toxic air pollution, fine particles, and other emissions from oil and gas extraction, according to public health experts. Tarrant County has suffered high rates of childhood asthma, birth defects, and other potential effects of drilling, but no government agency has ordered the kind of thorough public health assessment that could connect the dots.
Now, have there been any lawsuits regarding the fracking anywhere that you know of?
I suspect with a lot of these lawsuits, they may well be taken to private courts, and so the results of which won't be available in the public domain. And I suspect if there has been any fracas about it, they've probably been given big monetary incentives to keep quiet about it. But as far as I know, there hasn't been much by way of lawsuits in regards to this, but I can't say for certain. But as I say, when it involves these mega corporations, they tend to be very effective at sweeping it all under the carpet. They tend to operate with the legal system in order to make all their cases happen in private courts. And so, as I said, they'll never be available for the public domain. And then, obviously, there's probably all manner of threats and money changing hands. But yeah, I might look up a bit more in regards to the if there has been successful suing or by anybody for perhaps future episode.
Yeah, again, this is where Sheriff Mack could come in, and the constitutional counties that are being set up throughout the United States, where they can prevent certain things from going on that are of harm to their constituents. For example, when in Arizona, when Sheriff Mack was in duty there, there was a bridge that went out, and they started repairing the bridge, and the EPA came in and threatened to arrest and fine even the workers, the supervisor, and the state agencies for not being up to their codes and regulations. And Sheriff Mack stood up to them, threatening to arrest them for violation of state rights, because the state has a right too. It's the government and the Constitution was set up so that there's a balance of power, and the feds just can't come into states and do this. So they backed off, the EPA, and the bridge was built. Everything was okay. The locals finished it off. So there is some recourse here with people like Sheriff Mack who are taking it on, because the government was supposed to be set up to protect the rights of the people, not to order them around. That was the whole idea of the Constitution, that it's protection. It's not to give them rights over telling people what to do. And so you're in UK, but Tim is in Oregon. You have sheriffs in your county. I mean, the idea was to get together with them, give them information about the POA, the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Organization. There's a website you can go to, and it shows you how and what to say to the sheriffs in your county to introduce them to what they took an oath to, basically to protect the Constitution, protect your rights, and the rights of the environment. Basically, I mean, we're not here to harm the environment, so that's an option. Just putting it out there. That's what we found, that it's actually something you could do. Get together with your sheriff, and he has a lot of pull. A lot of he has the jurisdiction in his county over a lot of what goes on there, including drilling wells. You could get into a lot of things. So even that. So it was a sylvanite mine. That's the one I was thinking of. Is there any more information on that, Tim? Any progress, or they're just sitting there?
Oh, all I know is that the man that had the ownership, I guess, salmon, he passed away, I heard. So I was over down in the bottom, and the road is being used a little bit. There's no sign of any activity going on about it working again. So I don't know. I was thinking about going over and seeing Mrs. Salmon, and maybe if she's still around where they were living, to see what she thinks about it. If Larry Pringle or something still has the right or agreement with her about doing something up there. I was going to mention about the primary water drilling. The earth in certain places has very bad poisonous fumes, air, whatever you want to call it, in the earth. And that when a person is exploring into the crust of the earth farther than most wells have gone so far, there always has to be an awareness about if you hit the real poisonous stuff in the earth, to be able to seal it, because who knows how much can be in unexplored areas in the earth, because it just may depend what's going on in that particular area down inside the mantle or the rock. Because when those wells get out of control with so much pressure or something, and if it was poisonous gas instead of the fossil fuel kind of gas, some kind of deadly gases, just have to be aware that you have to be able to know that it's deadly gas, even if you can't smell it, or need to keep an animal like the miners did in the mines down deep. They'd have a canary in the cage, and if the canary dies, then you got to get out of there, because they die first because their heart beats faster. And anyway, that's the earth. You just never know what you're going to run into in the process of trying to get to this primary water in certain areas. So there has to be precautions that way too.
Yeah, well, the early pioneers, Stephen Rice and Paul Power and others, apparently, even without the technology, they were able to locate it. As far as I know, I haven't heard any horror stories, about that. Plus, the primary water is usually not that deep. I mean, even expense is cheaper than drilling for aquifers a lot of the times, they claim. I mean, I'm just studying this myself, but it could be 100 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet, you hit it. So yeah, there's a lot going on, and with the modern technologies, the gamma rays, the different, even satellite imagery, and then you take into account the bio indicators, the plant growth, the trees, the rock formations, etc. All that. There's a whole scope of things you look at to see where this could be, the surveying part of it, to see where the primary water could be. So the technology is more so nowadays. So it's almost, at least they say, the companies say it's almost guaranteed they can find it. At least 90% chance. Paul Power claims 95%, even in those days, before he had the technology. He could do it basically with the bioindicators and dowsing, 95% success rate. He drilled hundreds of wells all over the world, different environments. So again, it's like you, Tim, with the gold, and get somebody who knows what they're doing, and then most likely you get to make it happen.
Oh, well, I just saw on the local news that they're claiming that this year has been one of our least wildfire years here in our area. It's all around us burning up, but I guess they've already burned up this area enough that they're hitting the other forests that they haven't burned up yet in this Northern California and Oregon. Well, there's so much fire going on, so many places still all over the earth where it's not the rainy season. And I guess Utah has a lot of its country getting burnt too. It sure would be beautiful to see the primary water being provided in the parts of the earth that just sit there dry and barren without the water, to bring the water on. And if it's got any kind of fertility to the area in the soil right away, once you get the water and you have that sunlight, then you get to work the land and grow the fruits and vegetables and flowers get the bees back populating. And the water seems so important. All right, without it, this earth wouldn't even have life, it sounds like. So that's one of the necessities of.
Well, are you familiar with the air rock drilling mechanism?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what they normally use, is my understanding, because it's a cleaner way to drill in the boreholes.
Hey, they're around $100,000. They're not an inexpensive machine to punch the holes. Well, that's just part of it. And then there's the casing, and that's always an expense too. Yeah, once you get into that good source, like those springs that produce thousands of gallons an hour on Earth just coming up, then it's going to go on for, well, probably as long as this surface world lasts, depending on earthquakes and stuff to mess up things sooner. But that's another thing, how the earthquakes affect wells. A well can be a very good well for a long time, and the earth can move and bust up where the well is, and that's start all over again and to get the water. So there's a lot to deal with getting the primary water. Just depends what the earth itself is deciding to do about its disturbance on the surface.
Well, that would be an interesting topic too, to investigate the California being an island at one point idea. You know, the old maps show from the valley, San Joaquin Valley over, used to be a separate landmass. So that would be something too to investigate. Something that goes along with the Tartarian kind of ideas and flat Earth, maybe. But anyway, just remind me of that. And remind me of Lake Elsinore too up here, or down. Well, it's down from you. It'd be yeah, down from you. Lake Elsinore is like in the San Joaquin Valley. They drilled in the 1950s, I think 3 or 4 primary water wells because it was drying up. So they drilled 3 wells, and now it's full and thriving. In those days, it was still more accepted, the theory of deep-seated water. So there's places around the world that actually are using it. And if you find anybody that we can talk to or bring them on, it'd be great. I've been trying to do that. Interview somebody that's actively using primary water. It'd be great to hear from them. Okay, I guess we're near the end of the show here. Kevin, do you have anything last thing to say? Thanks, Kevin, for your share. Maybe you can continue next time if you didn't finish.
Yeah, as I said, the article was quite extensive, and fracking is obviously an ongoing situation, so there are quite a lot of cases that can be found. It's just a situation of unearthing them, because a lot of what's actually going on in relation to it, with all the poisoning and the toxins and the health issues, you won't find in mainstream sites. So obviously you have to go to alternative sites to track this information down, and of course they are rapidly suppressing it all and making a lot of it inaccessible. But nevertheless, I will continue on with it next week. And so
yeah, and I'll find out more about how primary water does or doesn't affect the seismic activity or the structure of the inner earth there, the faults and all that. So thanks everybody for being here. We sing the NUUU to finish. NUUU. Kevin?
NUUU.
Tim?
New